There's a quote that has been sitting with me for a while. It goes something like this. It's amazing how far we go to hide who we really are from the world. Maybe because we don't want them to know how much they actually mean to us. We'd do anything for them, travel any distance, risk everything, even fight monsters. And still, it feels easier to hide it because admitting you need people can feel like weakness, like a liability, especially when the worst pain imaginable is losing someone you love or realizing they've already left you behind. So we put on a mask, and maybe the hardest truth of all is that sometimes the mask isn't hiding who we are, but it is who we've become. That last part is what gets me. Sometimes the mask isn't hiding who we are. Sometimes it becomes who we are. And I know what mine looked like. When everything was going wrong, somebody could ask me how I was doing, and I'd smile and say, I'm fine. That was it. That was my mask. Welcome to Dad After. Life changed. Fatherhood didn't. Because your story, it isn't over. Today, I want to talk about the masks we wear, especially as men. And I'm not talking about being fake. I don't think most men are walking around trying to fool everybody. Sometimes the mask is how we survive the day. You've still got responsibilities. Your kids still need you. Work still has to get done. Life doesn't stop because something inside is falling apart. So you learn how to function. You learn how to smile when you don't really feel like smiling. You figure out how to have a normal conversation while your head is somewhere completely different. And there is strength in that. I still believe there is. There are times in life when you have to stand up even though you don't feel like standing up. There's a difference between carrying something heavy and pretending it isn't heavy. I think I spent a long time pretending it wasn't heavy. And if I'm being truthful, there are still times I do it now. After my divorce, most people probably thought I was doing all right. I was functioning. I was working. I was still dad. I went to jiu-jitsu. I talked to people. I laughed and smiled. I was trying to figure out what came next. If you saw me for an hour, there was a pretty good chance you would have left thinking, well, Glenn seems all right. But I didn't feel all right. Underneath all of that, I felt like a failure. And that became bigger than the divorce itself. There's a difference between saying my marriage failed and saying I am a failure. One describes something that happened, the other tells you who you think you are. The second one is dangerous because it doesn't stay contained to one part of your life. Once I started seeing myself that way, I could find evidence everywhere. Maybe I wasn't the husband I thought I was. I wasn't providing the way I should. The future I had pictured wasn't going to happen. Maybe all these things I wanted to build were just ideas I kept talking about. You can start examining every part of your life through the same lens until everything becomes evidence against you. And then somebody walks up and says, "How are you doing?" And you smile, "I'm fine." They have no idea. And the crazy part is, you almost become proud of how well you can hide it. That's something I still wrestle with now. Looking at my life from the outside, I'm working on my backflow business. I started Dad After. I'm building a beard company. I'm training, raising my kids. I'm trying to create a better future. That can look like momentum, and a lot of it is. I genuinely want to build these things. I want my kids to have opportunities I didn't have. I want more freedom. I want to create something that lasts. But I've also realized that being productive can make a hell of a hiding place. Because as long as I'm building something, fixing something, planning something, or chasing the next thing, I don't have to sit still for very long. And sometimes sitting still is when the truth gets loud. The truth for me right now is that I can be excited about what I'm building and still be lonely. I can believe in my future and still be scared that I won't find somebody to share it with. I can have a really productive day and then sit in my fifth wheel at night and realize there isn't anybody here to tell about it. Those things don't cancel each other out. I think for a long time I believed that they did. If I'm doing well, I shouldn't feel lonely. If I'm motivated, I shouldn't feel lost. If I got plans, I shouldn't be scared. That's bullshit. You can be moving forward and hurting at the same time. You can look like you're winning and still not feel like you're winning. Right after the divorce, one of the ways I dealt with everything was drinking. And I mean drinking. I'm not going to exaggerate it, but I'm not going to clean it up either. When I didn't have the kids, I was drinking pretty much every night for a long time. And when I say I'd have 5 or 6 drinks, I don't mean 5 or 6 perfectly measured little shots. I drank whiskey and Sprite, and I had a heavy hand. So most nights I was getting pretty buzzed and pretty drunk. When I had my kids, I didn't do that. I knew I couldn't be that guy with them there. But when they weren't there, it became real easy to pour something and turn my brain down for a few hours. And that's what it really was. It wasn't because whiskey tasted so damn good that I needed it every night. It was because for a little while, I didn't have to think as hard. The problem is that whatever you're trying to not think about doesn't go anywhere. Morning comes and it's still there. The divorce was still real. The house was still quiet. I still had to figure out who I was now. I still had to figure out what life looked like when the version of the future I had planned wasn't happening anymore. The alcohol didn't answer any of that. It just delayed the conversation. And I think that's worth asking ourselves when we're going through something. Not necessarily, is this thing bad? But why am I reaching for it so much right now? Because you can numb yourself with things that don't look anything like alcohol. You can hide inside the gym. You can go on as many dates as you want. Hell, you can hide inside your own ambition. Anything that keeps you from having to sit with yourself can become a part of your mask. There's also a darker part of that period. There were times when I thought about ending everything. I want to say that carefully because I'm not telling you that I had some detailed plan I was preparing to carry out. I didn't. But I got low enough that that thought existed. That if a pothole hit just right and I went into a phone pole or rolled my truck or car, that I could just be gone. And that's dark enough. Questioned my own worth. I wondered what I was actually doing with my life. I wondered whether I mattered the way that I thought I did. And that's probably the most dangerous thing about wearing the mask really well. Nobody knows. People can only respond to the person you let them see. I think sometimes we secretly hope somebody's gonna figure it out anyways. Somebody's gonna notice the smile's fake. Somebody's gonna hear something in your voice. somebody's going to call at exactly the right time and say, hey man, I know you keep saying you're good, but you're not. What's going on? That's asking people to see through a wall that you built specifically so they couldn't see through it. I told people I was fine. Then part of me was disappointed when they believed me. That's a hard contradiction to admit, but it's true. The mask worked. That was the problem. Even now, one of the biggest reasons I don't reach out more is because I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to call somebody and unload my problems onto them when I have no idea what they're carrying themselves. I have friends, but I don't have this big social group where we're constantly at each other's houses or getting together every weekend. A lot of the guys that I talk to regularly are the guys that I train with. We see each other at jiu-jitsu, we talk, we joke, we beat the shit out of each other for an hour, and then everybody goes home. And I can sit there later thinking, man, I wish somebody would call me. But then I have to ask myself, when was the last time I called somebody? When was the last time I said, hey man, you want to go get dinner? That's uncomfortable because it means loneliness isn't always something the world is doing to me. Sometimes I'm helping build it. Not because I want to be alone, because I don't want to bother anybody. So I wait for them to make the first move. And maybe they're sitting at their house thinking the exact same thing. That's kind of what I'm starting to understand. We can all be waiting for somebody else to reach out while everybody is sitting alone. Being single again adds another layer to it. I want to find somebody. I want to be loved. I want that relationship again eventually. But dating after everything you've been through is weird. Because obviously you don't sit across from somebody on a first date and say, all right, here's every insecurity, every failure, every fear, and every emotional scar I've collected. Appetizer? Nobody does that. You try to put your best foot forward. You want to be confident. You want to make her laugh. You want her to see the things you're proud of. But underneath that can still be this question. What happens when she sees the rest? What happens when she sees that I don't have every piece of this figured out? What happens when she sees the parts that don't fit the version of me I wanted her to see? And that's where the mask gets complicated. Because there is a difference between having boundaries and hiding. Not everybody deserves immediate access to every part of you. But if nobody ever gets access, then eventually you're not protecting yourself anymore. Isolating yourself. And sometimes you don't wear the mask because you've never tried taking it off. Sometimes you wear it because you did take it off once and didn't like what happened. I had a conversation with my dad where I finally told him that I felt like a failure. He asked me why. And eventually, he told me to stop that shit. Now, knowing my dad, I don't believe what he meant was, I don't care how you feel. I think he meant almost the opposite. He was telling me, you're not a failure. Stop talking about yourself like that. That was probably his way of trying to pull me out of the hole. But in that moment, it wasn't what I needed. Or at least wanted. I wasn't necessarily looking for somebody to correct the conclusion yet. I wanted somebody to understand how I got there. I wanted to be able to say, man, I feel like I've screwed everything up. And maybe here, all right, tell me what's making you feel that way. There's a lesson in that for both sides. For the man opening up, one bad response doesn't necessarily mean somebody doesn't love you. Sometimes people genuinely don't know what you need. But there's also a lesson for the person listening. When somebody finally tells you something they've clearly been carrying for a while, you don't always need to immediately fix it. Sometimes you need to shut up for 5 minutes, and that's it. Listen. I think that's difficult for us because men tend to be problem solvers. If you give me a problem with total backflow, I immediately start figuring out what needs to change. Something is wrong with a piece of equipment, I diagnose it. Something isn't working in a business, you find the bottleneck. But another human being isn't always asking to become your next repair project. Sometimes a man tells you his marriage is falling apart, and the most useful thing you can say isn't some brilliant piece of advice. It might just be, "Damn, brother, talk to me." Let him get to the end of the thought. If he wants your advice, you'll probably know. And if you're the guy who needs to talk, maybe tell your friend what you actually need. I'm not asking you to fix this. I just need to get it out. I think that one sentence could save a lot of bad conversations. Because now he doesn't have to guess his job. His job is to just listen. There's another reason this matters to me, now that I'm a dad. You might hide what's hurting you, but that doesn't mean the pain stays hidden. It usually comes out somewhere. For me, sometimes it comes out as irritability. I can be stressed about money or business or relationships, and somehow the person who catches the edge of it is one of my kids. Then later I look back and think, why was I that irritated? They weren't the problem. They were just being kids. The problem was that I was carrying something else and acting like I wasn't. That's one of the things I've had to own. My kids don't need to know every adult problem I'm dealing with. They shouldn't. But they also shouldn't have to experience the consequences of the problems I refuse to deal with. If I bury everything and then become angry, distant, short-tempered, or distracted, I didn't actually protect them from it. I just made them experience it without understanding where it came from. That matters to me. I don't want their memory of dad to be that I was technically present, but it was always somewhere else in my head. Now I know this is where conversations like this can drift into something I don't agree with. I'm not telling men that strength is bad. I believe men should be strong. I want my kids to know they can depend on me. I want to be capable when life gets difficult. Sometimes you do have to put your feelings to the side temporarily because something important needs to be handled. That's adulthood. But temporary is different from permanent. Being able to control your emotions is strength. Pretending you don't have emotions isn't. Those are two different things. I can say, "This hurt me," without letting the hurt run my life. I can admit, I don't know what the hell I'm doing right now, and still make the next responsible decision. I can cry and still be a man. And then tomorrow, I can stand back up and get back to work. Those things are not contradictions. I think sometimes we've confused strength with silence. They're not the same. There's a version of this in faith too. Sometimes Christians have their own version of "I'm fine." We say, "God's got it," and I believe He does. We say, "I'm trusting His plan," and I try to. But sometimes those phrases can be just another mask if we're using them to avoid admitting something hurts, like hell. Faith doesn't require me to pretend I understand everything God's doing. It doesn't require me to enjoy every chapter. It doesn't mean I never feel angry or afraid or disappointed. God already knows what's actually there anyway. I'm not fooling him because I use the right church answer. When I look backward, I can see where God has gotten me through every worst day I've had so far. Not always the way I wanted. There are things I prayed that would work that didn't. There are people I wanted to stay who didn't. There are chapters I would never have chosen, but I'm still here. So when I get those moments where I don't know what comes next, I try to remind myself of that. I've been scared before. I've been lost before. I've thought there was no way forward before. And somehow there was still another morning. That is a big part of why Dad After exists. The after doesn't mean everything magically becomes good. It means there's something on the other side of what happened. You still have a story to live. Part of that quote I opened with that bothers me the most is the idea that sometimes the mask becomes who we've become. Because that can happen quietly. You say I'm fine enough times, and eventually you stop checking whether it's true. You get used to changing the subject when things get personal. You become the dependable guy, the funny guy, the busy guy, whatever version of yourself keeps anybody from looking too closely. And after a while, you're not only hiding from everybody else, you stop asking yourself the questions too. What am I actually feeling? Why am I so irritated lately? Why am I drinking every night? Keeping myself this busy? Why do I feel lonely but keep turning down opportunities to be around people? Why am I so afraid somebody might actually see all of me? That's when I think the mask becomes dangerous. A mask can protect you for a while, but anything you refuse to take off eventually starts suffocating you. At the same time, taking off the mask doesn't mean everybody gets access. That's not wisdom either. Some people are terrible people to be vulnerable with. Somebody may gossip. Somebody may dismiss you. Somebody may genuinely care but still have no idea how to respond. You don't owe every person your deepest wounds. What I think matters is whether there is somewhere you can be honest. Maybe that's one friend. Maybe it's your brother, your dad. Even if sometimes the conversation doesn't go perfectly. Maybe it's a pastor or a counselor. Maybe it's somebody you train with who has been through some shit himself. You don't need an audience. You need somewhere the performance can stop. Somewhere you can say, man, I'm having a hard time, and leave the sentence there. No, but I'm good. No joke immediately afterward to make everybody comfortable. Just the truth. And this is the part I've been thinking about the most. How can I expect people to ask me how I'm doing when I don't reach out and ask them? I have no idea what anybody else is carrying. The guy I train with, who seems completely fine, could go home to a marriage that's falling apart. The friend I haven't talked to in 3 months might be sitting there wondering whether anybody gives a shit about him. And maybe he's saying, I'm fine too. So maybe the first move isn't calling somebody and unloading everything you're dealing with. Maybe the first move is just reaching out to somebody else and saying, hey man, I was thinking about you. How are you doing? It's not complicated. Maybe the conversation stays completely normal. Fine. But maybe it doesn't. Maybe he tells you something you had no idea he was dealing with. Maybe you go get dinner. You go hunting. Maybe you sit somewhere for an hour and actually talk. And then maybe he asks, how are you doing? Now, you've got a decision. You can put the mask right back on and say, I'm good. Or maybe you move it at least 1 inch. Man, honestly, it's been kind of rough lately. You don't have to tell him everything. Just stop lying about nothing being wrong. And if somebody chooses you to be that person, understand what that means. If a man who's normally quiet calls you and says, dude, I need to talk, pay attention. You don't have to save him. You don't have to have the perfect answer. Give him somewhere to put it down for a minute. If he needs to cry, let him cry. I mean that. Man to man, it's alright to cry. That doesn't mean we stay on the floor forever. Eventually, tomorrow comes. You have to stand back up, and you keep going. But sometimes, you've got to stop pretending it doesn't hurt before you can actually move through it. Maybe he cries tonight and goes to work tomorrow. Both can be true. That's strength too. And because I talked about my own thoughts getting dark after the divorce, I need to say this clearly. If you are listening to this and you're thinking about actually hurting yourself, don't make I'll deal with it myself your plan. Get around somebody. Tell somebody the truth. Get professional help. If you're in the United States, call or text 988. There is nothing strong about dying silently because you were afraid of becoming somebody else's burden. At that point, let somebody carry some of it for you. I don't think the goal is to walk around completely unguarded. I don't think everybody deserves access to every part of you. I think the question is simpler than that. Is there anywhere in your life where you don't have to wear the mask? And if the answer is no, maybe that's where you start. Reach out to somebody this week. Not because you're expecting him to fix you. Reach out because you don't know what he's carrying either. Send the text. Make the call. Ask, hey man, how are you really doing? And if at some point he asks you the same question, maybe don't automatically say, I'm fine. Tell the truth by 1 inch. Maybe that's enough to start. If you need to cry, cry. If you need somebody to listen, tell them that. And when tomorrow comes, stand back up and take the next step. I've made it through every worst day I've had so far. So have you. And if you're a man of faith, God has already brought you through the things you once had no idea you were going to survive. Maybe you don't know what he's doing with this chapter yet. Neither do I with some of mine. But I'm still here. And you're still here. So the story isn't over. This is Dad After. Life changed. Fatherhood didn't. Because your story, it isn't over.